Whoops. Hi, Bobby.
Hi there. How are you?
Good.
All right, we'll go ahead and call this meeting to order. Thank you for showing up. This is the regular meeting for Thursday, July 18th, 2024 at the Emmett Shockley Administration Building. Mr. Kroll, can you call roll, please?
Yes, sir. Mrs. Cameron,
Yes.
Mrs. Paez,
Here.
Mrs. Crumley,
Present.
Mr. Roscoe,
Present.
Mr. Crowe present.
And with that, we have a full board. So on to Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I salute the flag of the state of Mexico, as the symbol of friendship among united cultures.
All right. On to approval of the agenda. Any changes to the agenda before?
No changes.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, I would move approval of the agenda as it's presented.
Do you have a second?
I'll second that.
Mr. Crowe?
Yes, sir. Mrs. Crumley,
Yes.
Mrs. Paez,
Yes.
Mrs. Cameron,
Yes.
Mr. Roscoe,
Yes.
Mr. Crowe, yes.
That on to public comment? No public comment?
There's no public comment.
Okay. So with that, on to reports, district strategic planning presentation.
Yes.
Um,
So, yes, Mr. President, members of the board, we have Bobby Gutierrez and Denise Johnston, who you all know, to deliver the kind of the final information related to the vision, mission, core values and goals of the board. And Mr. Turner's pulling up their presentation right now. So give us just a second and we'll let them get started. There we go. All right, Denise and Bobby, you guys are welcome to get started.
Perfect. Well, thank you for having us again this evening and thank you for your work on this. It's been really great. So what we want to do, we have just a short presentation that the superintendent will call for action on later in the meeting. And these were your choices as they kind of shook out either in the responses that you provided, or we really put President Orozco on the spot last meeting with quizzing him about his options, and then met individually with Secretary Kroll and board member Pies. So anyway, the expectations for our meeting this evening is to review and discuss your district's recommended vision, mission, core values, and board goals, and then adopt by board action the district's new vision, mission, core values, and board goals. So I'm just going to walk you through these quickly, what this would look like. So the purpose, of course, is growing champions. You all really like that idea of growing champions when we met in at your board retreat on June 8th. And then the recommended vision, you were all very unanimous on this, was building a legacy of champions. And Denise and I both think that's a great vision. It's easy to remember, and it's a strong statement. The recommended vision is to challenge and support each student to achieve their personal best in becoming champions of excellence in academics, career technical education, the arts, athletics, extracurricular activities, and community service. And this truly, I think, Denise and I think is a great vision because it really represents educating the whole child. Your recommended core value statements, innovation, the one that was I guess not well received, but the one that the majority of you felt that you really liked was our district champions innovation, fostering a culture of growth and ambition through risk-taking and adaptability. And we're committed to excellence, balancing progress with safety and passion in every endeavor. Safety. We prioritize safety in every aspect of our environment, ensuring that every member of our school community feels safe and secure. Advocacy. As advocates, we are dedicated to fostering an environment where kindness is the norm and fairness is the standard, ensuring equal opportunities for success. Accountability. Our pledge to accountability means we are committed to delivering reliable outcomes informed by knowledge and marked by consistency, quality, and excellence. And ethics. Our ethical commitment is to uphold integrity, honesty, accountability, respect, excellence, teamwork, innovation, diversity, sustainability, guiding our actions and decisions to foster a trustworthy, transparent, inclusive, and forward-thinking organization. Transparent was not in this statement, and board member Pice suggested transparency, which fit well. Denise and I agreed, and we added it because transparency is important. Your board goals. And again, we have to really begin to work with Superintendent Chavez and her executive staff, as well as district leadership at, the principal level and with teachers to determine the outcomes and how we best measure your board goals. But board goal 1 was to foster academic excellence and achievement. We will foster student success through high quality, innovative education. Our focus is to enhance students' knowledge and skills, preparing them for higher education and the workforce through an emphasis on student-centered learning. We are committed to providing the resources and support needed for their outstanding achievement and success. Board goal 2, optimize financial management and district operations. We will ensure fiscal responsibility and operational efficiency within the school district. We will strive for transparent financial practices, prudent resource management, and streamlined operations to support educational excellence and sustainability. Board goal 3, enhance health, safety, and wellness. We will strategically advance health, safety, and wellness across the district. We will develop and implement a comprehensive plan that promotes physical and mental health, ensures a safe learning environment, and fosters a culture of well-being for all students and staff. Board Goal 4, build family and community connections. We will enhance family and community involvement in our schools. We will establish strong relationships with families, local organizations, the business community, and stakeholders to enrich educational experiences and provide diverse. And Denise and I are recommending that we put learning into this. It was initially diverse opportunities, but diverse learning opportunities because we're talking about students, for our students. And the expected outcomes play a crucial role in enhancing the effectiveness of your board goals by providing clear direction and measurable targets. Here's how they contribute to smartening up board goals. So our expected outcomes will provide clarity and focus. Expected outcomes define what success looks like, allowing the staff to focus on strategic priorities rather than getting sidetracked by less important issues. Strategic alignment, they ensure that the board's goals are aligned with the purpose, vision, and mission and foster a unified approach to achieving long-term priorities. And performance measurement, by setting specific measurable outcomes, the board and superintendent can track progress, making it easier to identify the areas that need improvement. Decision-making, clear expected outcomes provide a basis for informed decision-making. Accountability, they establish a benchmark for accountability so staff understands they are responsible for delivering the expected outcomes to support the board goals. And continuous improvement, regularly reviewing the progress towards expected outcomes allows the board to adapt and refine their goals as needed, ensuring continuous improvement and relevance. In essence, the expected outcomes will serve as your GPS for your board goals, guiding the boards towards effective governance and strategic success. And any questions that you may have at this time.
Questions from the board?
I was just wondering, what does the timeline look like as far as meeting with, all of the people you named earlier in administration so that we can get some more measurable goals set?
That's a great question, board member. And Denise and I plan, if you adopt this piece of the work tonight, it allows us to go to work with your superintendent and the central office staff, as well as district administration and teachers, students, parents, all the stakeholders in the district. So we hope to be in Deming next week, and then we'll be back August 11th through the 22nd or 23rd. I'll have to look at the exact dates, but we'll live in your community for a couple of weeks, spend a lot of time in your schools and working with not only principals, but teachers to get their input, as well as your community, including some parent meetings, as well as meetings with your business community and any other stakeholders that you deem or your superintendents deem necessary that you would like for us to meet with. So we're really excited to be working with you all and to really support everything that you discussed at our board retreat last month in June, and figuring out how do we do this work together.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions, comments? Well, we want to thank you for your time in doing this for us. It assists us greatly, so
Yes.
we really do appreciate it.
We're really excited. Both Denise and I believe that Deming has you're already doing a lot of really great things. Truly, you are. And, you know, our job is to make you even greater. So we're very excited to, as Denise says, I should let her say this, roll up our sleeves and get to work.
Well, thank you. If you guys don't have anything else, then we'll move on.
Okay, thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
All right, with that onto the consent agenda. And I'll entertain a motion.
I'll move to approve the consent agenda for minutes of special meeting held on July 3rd, 24, payment of bills, June 24.
We don't,
Huh?
just a consent agenda. You don't have to read all that. Yeah, it's okay. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Mr. Crowe?
Yes, sir. Mrs. Crumley,
Yes.
Mrs. Paez.
Yes.
Mr. Orozco.
Yes.
Mrs. Cameron,
Yes.
Mr. Crowe, yes.
On to number 8, action items, and on to item A, consideration and approval of district strategic plan to include vision, mission, core values and goals.
Yes, Mr. President, that's exact, and that would be my recommendation so that we can continue this work. We already have our directors and departments scheduled to meet with them next week. We have one school next week, and then we have all the rest of our schools and our parent meeting when they come back in August.
And once they get all that together, then they'll come back
Then we'll
again.
have specific outcomes, specific goals. Yes.
Any questions by the board? No? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll move to approve the district's strategic plan to include vision, mission, core values, and goals as presented by Ms. Gutierrez.
I'll second that.
Okay, Mr. Crowe?
Yes, sir. Mrs. Crumley,
Yes.
Mrs. Paez.
Yes.
Mr. Orozco.
Yes.
Mrs. Cameron,
Yes.
Mr. Crowe, yes.
All right.
And thank you so much for that.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
This is really helpful. It's gonna help us next week too, and as we start to meet with staff.
Okay, on to item.
Action item B, Mr. President, is a budget adjustment request for pre-K, a transfer, and I believe Ms. Doyle has more information.
Yes, good evening, Mr. President, members of the board, Superintendent Chavez. You do have just one bar for approval, and we did receive approval from the ECECD that we could pay for custodial supplies specifically for NM pre-K students. So we are requesting to move funds in order to do that. And that's the only one I have, so we'll stand for any questions.
Any questions, comments by the board? Yeah. If not, I'll entertain a motion.
I make a motion that we approve the budget adjustment request as stated by Leslie.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Mr. Crowe?
Yes, sir. Mrs. Crumley,
Yes.
Mrs. Paez,
Yes.
Mrs. Cameron,
Yes.
Mr. Orozco.
Yes.
Mr. Crowe, yes.
Okay.
So, Mr. President, members of the board, the next action item C is related to the policies that still sections that C, D, G, I, and J. But before we work through the approval or non-approval of them, I do want to address some of the things that were brought up. I believe Ms. Crumley, you brought a few things up, and so I just want to address them real quickly to tell you kind of where we're at. So on that first one, where it talks about skills in foreign language, this is under I-0050, instructional goals and objectives. Initially, the initial response and what you had sent out to you, there was a misinterpretation thinking we had to offer foreign language at every school, and we don't.
Right.
So we're going to leave that in. So that was the first piece. And then if you go to I-6500 field trips, totally agree. I think it needs to say in general, field trips will be conducted within the normal school day. So where that is crossed out, we agree that that needs to be kept in. And however, we do want to not limit the number of miles they can travel. Because if it's out of state and
I
not
agree.
El Paso, we will bring it to you guys anyways for approval. So there's no point, we didn't feel, is that,
Yeah, I agree.
okay?
I just thought that it made sense to me to keep field trips generally within the school day.
Yes, and I think that's totally, because that doesn't mean we can't do them outside of the school
Yeah.
day, it's just our general practice. And then I believe the last question that was raised, well, might not be the last. But I do want to make sure, this was just a question I had, so I'm bringing it to you. On I-6711, the grading/assessment system. We have included the actual scales that we use. Whereas I kind of saw that as potentially more of a regulation than an actual policy. So I wanted to just point it out and ask you if you want it to be there or you want it to be in regulation. We can leave it here because it's how it's been read, and we can think about it and we can change it next month and say, no, we're gonna move that piece to regulation. But it's just something I wanted to raise as a question to you all as far as how you wanted to do that. And then I believe the last, let me just make sure because I wrote on these as well. Last item, I think was related to the age of the student and when school began. And completely agree that the first day of the school year would be the right language, to align with law. We can't have policy that contradicts law. So I think that was it. That was all I had to just bring up.
I think one of the things that I wanted to raise as a suggestion is, I think a lot of the proposed revisions that were sent out to the board included revisions to regulations and exhibits, and I don't necessarily think that the board should adopt those today until you've had a chance to really look at them yourself. Because I don't even think, and I could be wrong, I don't think that the board has to be the one to adopt regulations and exhibits.
That's correct.
And so I think that my suggestion would be that the board adopts the regulations and exhibits that are there in the policy service already, and then if you wanted to change them, then that's within your role.
Right. And then we would bring them to you because I mean, that's,
Sure,
and I
sure.
think that was the original, yeah.
I think,
There's pages and pages of
I-
regulations that were changed, and frankly, I just didn't have time to go through.
Sure.
and there is there's a lot, and so I'm encouraging, this is a living document, that's what they keep saying. So if it needs to be changed, we will change it to make it right. And I think that's, we gotta be flexible to be able to do that, not, stuck in one way.
Right.
So it's just too much, it's a lot, but it brings us up to what we're supposed to be here.
Right.
within
It
the state.
simplifies
Yeah,
our
it's a- yeah.
policies a lot.
Yeah,
It really
that was the
does.
concern I
So
had, I think.
if
was that-
anybody has issues, just
Yeah.
bring it up, and then we'll change it, as we're going,
Absolutely.
over and over, because it's not gonna be perfect, there's nothing
Right.
perfect.
Right.
So,
I just was nervous or hesitant to start changing a bunch of policies that were provided by the policy service for a reason, and I don't want to contradict the law, and I don't want to, I just think that it makes more sense to me that we adopt them as they are. And then if we needed to change things specific to Deming Public Schools, then I would rather somebody explain to me why we're changing it.
Sure.
Versus, here's 200 pages, please adopt it, and I don't know why, and I don't know.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. That makes sense.
As
Thank
I
you.
went,
and we're gonna change it we've changed it before many a time, so almost every other board meeting, we change something.
Yes.
I think the
Yes.
policy service just gives us a new start.
Yeah.
Agreed. Simplified.
as I went through all these policies, I found more than enough errors. I think we need to make sure we go through and everything is written correctly.
We'll just need to make sure that we that we go, yes, go
Yeah.
through it and that the grammar, you're talking grammar,
Yes, it
grammatical
was-
spelling,
Yeah,
whatever.
and it was
absolutely.
kind of embarrassing since we're the, you know,
So I think with the policy service, there's less errors, but if there are errors, we need to know those so that we can have the policy service change them on their end, because they are the ones that manage like the grammatical and the legal
Yeah.
correctness of those things. So yeah, absolutely. So
Right.
just get with Charles on the items that you found and
Yeah, I
we'll be
was
happy
just
to share that.
I was just
Sure.
surprised to find that in it.
Sure.
Any other comments, questions, concerns?
And so, other than those couple that you just talked about, I mean, are you asking that we adopt all of the other districts' revisions that were sent over the last few days? Or should we adopt the policy service as it is and then you come back? to
That's your
us?
decision.
What's your
Uh,
recommendation?
My recommendation, when I read through other than the ones I spoke up about, I do think they're important. I think that, but we can come back next month. It's not, I mean, I'm not opposed to doing that either. It defines, so a couple of things that I felt like did need to be in there. It says written reports to parents concerning student achievement will be made every 9 weeks. Well, we do report cards, so it just made sense to clean the language up, so it was very direct and anybody from the public would understand it. So that's what I felt about the rest of the things that were recommended, is that it just was more clean in terms of how it was worded, but I'm totally fine with you guys if you wanna, if you wanna adopt it from the policy service, I get that rationale too. And then we can come back next month and have these proposed revisions, or you can accept them as they are. It's really your decision. We'll manage either way.
I think the policy service is more of an overview, and then you just kind of drill down to what specific to your district and what's gonna work. So I mean, I think like Daniel said, it's gonna be a living document, and so it's subject to change and to kind of tweak to be able to get to where we need to. Yeah.
Well, and it can't, it's like a living document anyway, because if something happens and has to be changed,
Right.
it can be changed. It's not that
We will need to make the changes pretty quickly though, which will come to you next month and we'll start the reviews because again, like let me just give you one more example. So, gosh, I don't even know. It's under regulation. Well, actually, it's a regulation.
Right.
So,
So many of it, or so much of it.
Yeah.
sorry, was
You're-
regulations and exhibits.
so really, if you say I'm adopting policy, we're not we are not opposed to any of the policy that is there. It's in the regulations where I think we are trying to clean it up to match the practice, like the parent portal. We don't mail home report cards anymore. There's things like that, but that's all part of the regulation. So I think if you say policy, knowing that regulation will be, and I believe there's already a policy that allows me to change regulation. So I think we're fine on that.
I think the ones that I was worried about would have been, the ones regarding personnel and annual leave and sick leave and the request to leave existing policies in place of the policy service. So if we choose to adopt the policy service as a starting point, then I think you all would have to come back.
We are,
Okay.
and we will.
And maybe just with something more easy for us to follow. Because it was hard to go through. The
It's a
whole
lot,
thing to
right?
find,
No,
you'd have to go page by page by page to try and find the suggested edits. And then trying to skip over regulations and exhibits, because that section is very lengthy.
yes. So I agree.
Okay.
And the policy that I said to, like, I struck the sick bank one because it said certified can only donate to certified and non-certified to certified. So right now it's just you donate. So that's one that I said, no, let's keep our current policy as far as I'm gonna donate sick leave, I'm just donating it to the pool.
Yeah, and that makes sense. I think it just was hard to
find them.
Yes,
I
to
know.
find them and then also to be like, well, this, maybe we need to rewrite the current policy because like Mrs. Cameron said, some of the grammar is not all that wonderful.
Thank you. I thought maybe I was the
No, and some of it's kind of hard to understand, or some of the present policies are really long.
Yeah,
I was like, man, can we shorten this up to be a little more easy to understand? I don't know. I just, I admit, I just couldn't
There was
get
a lot,
through all
no,
of
I
it.
couldn't get through all of it either.
Well,
There's a
let me-
lot to
okay.
education,
Yeah.
isn't there?
But you know what I'm saying? Whatever we're doing now, we need to just continue doing it. You know, we don't need to change because.
Well,
you
but
know,
it does change.
No, I know it changes, but then we need to get back to what we need to do.
Yeah.
So maybe every board meeting, we add one or two things that we gotta change
Or I
back.
think it also gives us the opportunity just to revisit that policy and decide whether or not we want to. do it.
So then I think my recommendation, because on the personnel one specifically, it is very different than what the policy service recommends. I would say let's not adopt that section
Mhm.
so that we're operating under the section we currently have, because it is, one, it's part of the CBA with the union, and it is very different. It's not as simple as some of these instructional ones that
Right.
we just talked about.
What's nice about the policy service ones though, is a lot of them, I didn't read them all, a lot of them though say, unless a bargaining agreement says otherwise.
Yeah.
That's true.
I
That's
mean,
true.
It gives you that exception
It's true.
throughout the
True.
whole thing, but I think specifically about leave and the sick banks and or the general bank. They're very different, so.
so what I'm hearing is that we may, you know, we, at each board member, not do them all, but we'll have certain ones and then are we trying to do them at all?
Mr.
I'm
President,
sorry, I have this
or
down and.
Superintendent Chavez, as
I don't know
far
who's
as following
this.
what is presented through the policy service, that's fine. Section B, however, what I did present to you all, those were a lot of changes recommended by the auditor. So if we could approve that one with the changes, and I know Mrs. Crumley asked questions and I answered those, so I hope that's enough to carry that. But since they were recommended through the auditor, I would like to see it passed the way I presented.
And I don't have a problem with those edits. There wasn't very many.
No, there was not.
And I think that a lot of those edits were presented before,
It's,
so they're nothing new. I think one thing though, or one concern that I did have was, I think that for these suggested edits or revisions and things, I mean, I'd like to see them as part of the packet that goes out, versus just emails to board members. Like, I think that the community, and even, Deming Public School in advance of board members too, just in case they have input. Because otherwise, we're the only ones that know what we're talking about right now. And if nobody has comment, then nobody has comment. But I think that people should have the opportunity to read it if they want to.
So I think with that, after listening to everything, I think my recommendation would be to approve all of the policies here with the exception of G, which is the personnel, so that we still operate. Unless you feel comfortable with the CBA, but it is very, very different than the policy service is very different from our current policy. So that would be my recommendation, is that you approve them all with the exception of that one.
What
But-
what if we were to adopt everything with the exception of policies that apply to leave?
That would be,
I would.
Well, the whole G doesn't apply to leave.
that's true, that's true. So yes,
That would be
yeah,
easier.
that would be fine. That would be easier to manage. So that would be fine. That's actually a great idea.
The only other one I made a major edit to was the grievance one. I matched the CBA process.
I think it was a regulation.
Yeah,
Well, I added extra to the regulation, but,
but the regulation is ours that we,
Right, but the board policy said there was 3 steps.
oh,
And our CBA is there's 5. So I edited that and then I updated the regulation, but that's the only one.
Hopefully it has the disclaimer.
It does.
Okay. Yeah, they do.
So
I will move to approve policy sections C, D, G, I, and J. With the exception of including the modifications to D as presented to the board. And excluding from G any policies that reference leave, whether it's personal leave, vacation leave, sick leave, etc. Of the New Mexico School Boards Association Policy Service is the current board policies for Denver Public Schools, as well as amending all current policies to align with advisories as recommended by the NMSBA Policy Service to align with new legislation.
And I second that.
motion in a second, Mr. Crowe?
Yes, sir. Mrs. Crumley,
Yes.
Mrs. Paez.
Yes.
Mrs. Cameron,
Yes,
Mr. Orozco,
Yes.
Mr. Crowe, yes. And
Thank you.
remember that is a living document, it can be changed, and I will change it if it needs to be changed.
All right.
We sure will.
see how this,
With that, on to item D, consideration and acceptance of quote. Ice station,
Yes,
Mr. Wayne.
I'll let Mr. Wayne.
I have a problem. It's not,
Mr. President, members of the board, Superintendent Chavez, this is pretty standard. We've had this for about 10 years, I'd say at this point. iStation is a required assessment in K2 for now English, or reading and math. This allows us to have an intervention / instructional tool that we've utilized with that assessment for, again, like I said, about 10 years in all of our elementary schools. Coming to you because it is over 60,000. But like I said, it's something that we've been using for some time.
And is required by
And
the
is
state.
required.
So
But it's over 60, so I wanted to bring that to you in light of work policies.
Is there any other?
No, and
It's
we
just
have,
them and
we
that's
certainly
it.
have asked.
we don't
It's a
necessarily agree with
monopoly.
this a tool, but it is something that we're required to do.
Wow,
It's part of our, yes.
and nobody else in the game. That's interesting.
then why do we have
It's
to
not,
vote
there's
on?
not other company.
Because it's over
that-
60,000.
I know.
New Mexico is.
They've chosen them as the provider.
It's actually my company. Oh,
Don't say.
Don't say that.
I was streaming that.
I was kind of.
It's not my
surprised on
company,
the-
guys.
I was surprised on the cost. It's just, it seems pretty expensive. I don't know.
So I
It is
will
a
comment on
grant.
that. It's actually, it's less than last year's. But when I first got the quote for this year, it was 120,000.
Wow.
And did a lot of back and forth with the company. I was pretty surprised myself.
Where are they out of?
iStation is, I
Yeah.
will say, they are out of somewhere in the Midwest, I guess.
So their address is Dallas, but I'm not sure if that's their headquarters or not.
There you go.
Wow.
And it is math, reading, and in Spanish.
And
Correct.
Spanish for those schools that are bilingual, yes. Sorry, thank
Whole
you.
job, sorry.
So reading and that, yes, reading and that. For all revenue.
Wow.
So we did get it down from 120 to 77. It
Good
was,
job.
It was a tough conversation too. But any other questions?
Any questions, comments by the board? No? None, I'll entertain a motion.
No, you don't want to.
Yeah, yeah.
I'll move that we approve the acceptance of quote Q 62327 3 iStation.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Mr. Crowe?
Yes, sir. Mrs. Crumley,
Yes.
Mrs. Paez.
Yes.
Mrs. Cameron.
Yes,
Mr. Orozco,
Yes.
Mr. Crowe, no.
I almost said that.
And with that, on to item
E.
E.
So, Mr. President, members of the board, Ms. Echeverry is here to tell you about a school violence prevention grant that we're applying for to get your blessing on.
Good evening, Mr. President, school board members, Superintendent Chavez. Before you is, our application for what's also known as the COPS grant, which is the School Violence Prevention Program. This is something that we have applied for in the past. I am happy that this year we actually did, receive another grant that had a grant reviewer that helped me prepare this application. So I feel like this is one of the stronger applications that we've actually had for this program going forth. But what we put into here is basically to improve our safety at our schools, which would be updating our safety infrastructure, which would include the card key access that we're doing so that we'd have some additional funding to help with that, as well as our tech upgrades, including our cameras and those systems, and then the threat detection equipment. And the threat detection equipment that we put in here was something that our SROs actually found that they would like us to purchase. And I don't know if you've ever been to some of the theme parks, but when you go through, there's like those little pillars on the side that do the detection when you go through, so it doesn't hold anybody up. So it's not like a regular metal detector. It doesn't look like it. You can decorate them however you want. It's something that's very non-intrusive. And we also put funding in there for having a safety coordinator position that will actually document all of the different cases that happen in the schools, any of the threats, and see if these prevention measures that we put forth, if we actually have an improvement in that, as well as the school climate and the safety that the kids feel in the area. And that's a major requirement for this grant. This would be a 3-year grant where we would have to provide that data from the implementation. The full amount of the grant that we applied for was for the max. The max that you could apply for was $625,000. And we had basically a split on there. So the federal share would be $468,750. And our share would be $156,250 for this grant. And I'll stand for any questions.
When you talked about the detectors, are those portable or
They're
they?
portable.
Okay.
So one of the reasons that we really looked at them is because where that we have a lot of safety concerns is actually in our activities. With like our football fields, different things like that, we'd actually be able to take these and move them to wherever we needed in the district for different events like that.
At the end of the grant cycle, we get to keep the equipment that we.
Yes, all the equipment that we purchase is ours. And we just have to follow all the requirements on the reporting for our data.
What type of data is reported?
They will request basically for us to track, how many times did we have a knife incident? Did we have any gun incidents in the schools? Where they were, any of those incidents that we have. We already do track quite a few through Infinite Campus, but let's say that we have a parent safety threat or anything like that. That may be something that we don't necessarily count in Infinite Campus. And so we would do any type of threat that comes through, and then they would track that to see if there's any difference once we implemented the measures, that if they go down or up.
And that includes school events too.
Yes.
All school events. And then there's also surveys that we would do to see how the students felt, as well as the parents, with the increased safety measures, if they felt safer in the schools, if they didn't, and any suggestions they would have during that time, because we would have ample money to be able to make some changes as well.
When I looked at it, I don't know if I read it correctly, but I didn't see there was a large number of different, so there was some that said 8, some of them said 10 different incidences, and maybe I was in the wrong place, or it was I don't know.
I had to put in all the incidents that we did have, and we actually didn't
It was
have
not a large
too
number.
many.
Yeah.
We didn't really have, and we didn't have too many like with gun or anything like that within the
Yes.
last year. In fact, I think the year before, we actually had a couple more when I did this.
Uh-huh.
And so we're doing a good job already in the schools. This will just help improve it to where we can even bring those incidents down even more.
And maybe, like you said, having a coordinator that's their specific job, you'll probably be able to see more of the actual numbers, because when incidents happen, not everybody takes the time to report it into Infinite Campus, so.
And we specifically don't capture any incidences at events, like that we don't do
Yes.
that at all right now.
So it might look like your numbers go up, but it's
Yeah.
actually that you're capturing data
More.
better.
And
Right.
I did talk about that in the grant that we've, haven't been able to document everything as much as we'd like to be able to see the different, and to see our improvements or if we've increased.
But over the 3 years, you'll be able to see it, but in the beginning.
Will incidents that aren't reported to law enforcement be tracked?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
because it seemed like, I know, at first I thought, well, surely there's been more than 8 fights.
Yeah.
But then I noticed it's only because,
Those
I
were-
guess only 8 were reported to law enforcement.
Well-
Which seems low to me.
It wouldn't be that, no, when there's assaults, they're always brought in to those. The issue might be that it doesn't get turned into any kind of charges or anything related to that. So that is more of the issue than. Once it does get turned over, we don't always have the data to know what happened with it.
Sure, but we should have data about
Oh, yeah.
when the district reports it.
Oh, yes, we do.
And the majority that I pulled was from actually our SRO reports and what was handled by them. So I pulled all of the information from the SR reports, and then we had Infinite too, because some of the SR reports maybe had not gotten into Infinite. And so we would be able, if we had that safety coordinator, be able to check to make sure that those reports are captured in both areas.
Yes.
Okay. Sounds like a good thing.
Okay, I'll stand for any more questions.
Questions, comments? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
I make a motion for the approval of the school violence prevention grant application as presented by Jessica Echeverry.
So a second,
I'll second that.
Mr. Crowe?
Mrs. Crumble,
Yes.
Mrs. Paez?
Yeah.
Mr. Roscoe?
Yes.
Mrs. Cameron?
Yes.
Mr. Crowe, yes.
Thank you. Okay, we're on to superintendent's report. That's the end of our action items. I did want to give you on that note of safety, our county is struggling, they have verbally notified us that they're struggling to fill both SRO positions that we've had in the past. We do not have anything in writing, so they have not signed a new agreement. However, our agreement stays in effect until they do something to us in writing. So they're trying to figure out if they're going to be able to give us 1, 2, none. And we've asked them for that. We're holding them to the contract that they do have to give us 60 days notice if they're going to be changing anything. And then we're also in talks with the city about could they fill in the gap if the county can't
And that's
fulfill the
because they're
2.
short, is that what it is?
That's my
Manpower
understanding,
issues.
is that they are struggling with staffing. So I just wanted to give you guys an update on that. As soon as we get something formal from them, I'll let you know, and we'll be either modifying the agreement or bringing the agreement exactly like it is. I just don't have
And
an
they handle
answer
what? They
yet.
handle Columbus and then they handle Baton, is it?
And Red Mountain, yes.
So does
Yes.
that mean that at least for now, unless something changes in literally the next few days, we won't have an SRO?
So they've confirmed that we'll have 1
Okay.
for sure. They don't know if they can meet the 2. Now, the good news is that the city police that we do have are deputized. So if there was an emergency out in the county, they could help out if we needed to. It's just not part of their regular routine. Am I saying that
Yeah,
accurately?
no, yeah, you're
Okay.
right. And something were to jump off, it's not gonna, the jurisdiction's not even gonna.
So
go into place.
Baton and Red Mountain are out of the county?
They are.
I wonder why the
Without
city
the
doesn't just
city.
annex them.
That's
I mean, and then that we just deal with them.
I don't know. But
I think
yeah,
And they would only have to supply in Columbus.
Yeah.
That's just an idea.
I
right.
think that they looked at that in the past. I don't know what the
I'm
holdup
not sure
was.
They haven't annexed.
Yeah, so be something to revisit.
So, and then, last month, I believe it was, or at some point in the last, 6 weeks or so, Ms. Crumley, you had asked for more information on the school designation. So we wanted to, just give you what we have now. And then knowing that as our new data comes in, because this is old, that we will be updating it. We'll probably, I think, we'll need to use one of those work sessions that you guys authorized to go deeper into the data, but for now, Mr. Wyman, who is our accountability director, is gonna go over this information, and we're gonna be happy to answer any questions, as well as Ms. Reinhardt to kind of talk about how it ties to the districts, not the districts, but the schools' 90-day plans and their strategic plans. So, Mr. Wyman, they have these.
Yes, Mr. President, members of the board, Superintendent Chavez, happy to come and see you guys again a few minutes later. So in November, I believe it was, we came and we presented the designations that were given to the school district and sent out by the state. And as you can see, I know this is a little bit much, but I want you guys to see where we were last year. And then if you look to the middle, you'll see where it says November designation, and that's where the state reported us at in November across the district. Unfortunately, the U.S. Department of Education had a finding, and they actually had many findings against the state of New Mexico. One of them related directly to this. And so what happens is when you have one of these designations that you see our schools had in 21-22, and again, so now we're talking 3 school years ago, 21-22, those designations that are not traditional are required by the federal government, the agreement between New Mexico and U.S. Department of Education to stay for 3 years. New Mexico did not do that. And so you'll see that all of our schools did make those gains, like we talked about in November. But unfortunately, they had to move us back to those previous designations due to, again, that agreement with the federal government. Another note, and it was kind of disappointing, is one of the things that they had to remove was this idea of a school of excellence, because they didn't have that in their agreement. And so that is the top 10% of schools in New Mexico. And so early college still is in the top 10%. But the agreement that they had and they still have at the time, is that there's a spotlight school. And so they had to move them down, and you'll see all of those other ones mirror where we were in 21-22 for the 22-23 school year. So there's a lot going on here, but just to be clear, so this is the designations from last year that they had to come back and edit at the state level, and this affected 95% of schools in the state of New Mexico.
But it's also important to note, because of that 3-year requirement, regardless of growth, those schools are going to stay there for another year. Like, that is their designation, regardless of how much they've grown.
The state is seeking to be able to change that with the U.S. Department of Ed, but I mean, this is where we're at for right now. So you're absolutely right. If they don't get that changed, it would stay there for next year too, regardless of the score. So I can even tell you, when we were at Bell together, we were a spotlight school and we were ATSI. So it's kind of crazy that you could have that, because we had made really good gains, but we still had that 3-year designation.
And Columbus is a perfect example. They had some really great gains, and they're designated in particular areas as doing really great, but they're still having to keep their main designation. And the designations are defined on the back, because it's a lot of information. Like, what does all that mean when it says MRI or when it says ATSI? And so Mr. Wyman gave you a key so you would know.
Are we gonna have a test?
Yeah, and then we're gonna quiz you on it.
The next 2 sheets of paper are exact mirrors of what we brought in November, because again, the data hasn't changed.
Yeah.
It's not that the data changed, it's that they had to go back because of the 3-year policy with the U.S. Department of Ed. Any questions?
Any questions on the data and the designations at this time?
I will tell you, it was very hard to break this news to principals too. Because, they have done a lot of really good things, a lot of really good work across the district. As you can see by the change in points from year to year across as well.
What effect do these points or ranking systems have? What's
So-
the effect?
With me is Mrs. Reinhardt. She's the new executive director of learning services. And so one of the things that we do is we have to have 90-day plans, and we have to have some strategic planning at the school site level. So she's here to share a little bit about that with me as well.
So 90-day plans have always been in existence, but what their state has done now is, based on your designation, you have different requirements for your 90-day plan. And that will be new this year. So we outlined all of the new requirements to all of the principals in June. We are now meeting with individual schools based on their designation to help them develop 90-day plans that meet all the requirements. Because for example, if you're a CSI, you have to have 4 goals instead of the 2 goals. And so we're in the process of getting all of that done. And we've established district and school goals to start the year off. We have implemented district interims so that we'll be able to analyze data frequently as a district. We are creating what we call grade band work sessions with the principals. So for example, all of the principals that work with K2 students or school leaders that work with K2 are going to meet with our department, and we are going to analyze data and develop plans on that supports principals. So we'll have a K2 grade band work session, a 3-5, a 6-8, and then a 9-12. And the reason why we separate it out is because they have different assessments. And we want to really make it targeted to what the students are doing and develop interventions and adjustments based on what the data is showing. Our hope through these grade band work sessions that we're supporting principals to support the teachers that will then support the kids. We are also asking principals that they will attend weekly professional learning committee meetings with their teachers. We are going to have, that's what the grade band work sessions will do to support that, to model those. So they'll be meeting with their teachers weekly to analyze data, look at how students are growing. We are asking school leaders to have bi-weekly walkthrough and feedback sessions so that teachers can have that individual feedback as well, and use what they're learning in PLCs to make sure it's getting into the classrooms. And our goal is to support all the school leaders in all of these new processes. I will tell you that the school leaders are energized and excited because we're never happy with what our data shows. And I can tell you, I've seen energy that's exciting. They're ready to go, and they're calling, they're sending us. I have almost all of the schools' PLC schedules already and their feedback schedules. They're really taking this initiative seriously.
So I guess to add to that, I think from a district level, not just those pieces, but I'm always thinking of the finances too, right? Like what can we do to leverage our resources? And we have accepted what's called high dosage tutoring money. You know, the PED has a lot of below the line funding. We've talked about that. And while we don't agree with them holding money back like that, it is definitely something we can utilize. And so we are going to be hiring an interventionist at every school, every elementary school, I should say, with a targeted focus on our K2 so that we meet that reading by 3rd grade. There'll be, and that will be a structured intervention program based on the data that we're helping them identify who needs those interventions and support them. But then as part of that, we'll have, so those will be EA positions, just kind of give you the idea of the plan. And then we'll have a teacher manager of that facilitator who will be ensuring that they are getting the training to do it. It is a scripted program. They will be using scripted interventions, very similar to what you described, Mr. Cole, that before about tutoring and that sort of thing. And so they'll get that in the school day. Every kid who needs it will be getting it. We basically have 3 layers, the multi-layered system of support. This is falling into our second layer, where second and third layer, where we're addressing from the district perspective, we're giving them the resources to make sure we catch them early and get them on grade level, because we know it will be easier once they hit those upper grades if they're already reading on grade level. That's not the only thing we're doing, but I just wanted you guys to know that that was something that we went ahead and we accepted that money, and we're in the process of doing. Another piece is we are our high school 8th through 12th grade, I would say, is have identified that math is a big issue for them. And we agree our math scores are not where they need to be. And so we're looking at a better assessment to help them with that process. So again, targeting the resources so that right now they don't have any tools really to say where their kids are at, other than the standard and the content in the classroom. And what we need is a more nationalized standard of where our kids actually, so that we can adjust the interventions and they're coming up with ideas. I think we don't have the data to validate what exactly is needed at the high school, 8th through 12th grade, but we know something is needed. We got to figure out what that is, and we just don't have the right data to be able to tell them, to help them address those needs. And then in 6th grade, they've set up, every student is going through a high dosage tutoring type class. So they're not just getting their math class, but they're getting an additional math intervention support as well. So there's a lot of different layers. Some is from the district, some is being driven way down to the school site where they are adjusting schedules and things to address their specific needs. All with the lens of, do we have all of our resources aligned to support them to make those decisions? So,
and if I might add real quick, the reason we don't have those structures in place at the high school level in particular is because the state changed
yes.
about a year and a half, 2 years ago, I want to say 2 years ago, we switched to SAT for SAT school day. We used to have a different assessment. And so it's standards based maybe, but it's not really, and they don't give us that information. It's based on the college board standards, like a national assessment. And so we just don't have something that's hitting the same target. They take the first part of the assessment, for instance, and then the assessment that they get the second half is dependent on that first part. So we're looking at a platform, a company that works to really model that so that they can have similar assessments all throughout 9th, 10th, and 11th grade, leading up to that final SAT that they take in their junior year.
So is these percentages on the last page, are these the percentages that get reported to the state?
Yes.
Yes.
This is the what we call the MASA data, MSSSA. And then we have interim IMASA assessments that we're required to give as well, to kind of help us monitor. We should have 23, 24 soon that we can do a work session around those.
It
Okay.
won't look quite the same.
Right.
Because this is based off of what they do for Vistas, and they're planning to release that, I believe it's in October. But as far as achievement data at school sites and things like that, we would be able to work in that.
Right.
I had a question for Cesar Chavez, Charter High School. Is the schools, are you guys going to provide support to them also? Or do they receive their support from maybe the REC or somewhere else? Because I know that their population is very different, and sometimes the school supports them in areas and some other areas.
So they really drive their own instructional model, and that's really part of, in our performance framework is really how we evaluate. If they reach out to us and say, hey, can we participate? Can we get in on this? Of course, we support them.
Right.
But they're an autonomous school, who make those decisions for themselves.
Because they can also reach out to the REC, am I right?
And they do. Yes, yes. The REC, there's PED has programs, like there's a lot of things out there that they could definitely, but they can also come to us. I mean, we're always inviting them, and they're always included in anything we do.
Yeah. Thank you.
And we still oversee their assessment program because we're required to by the state, and so I
Right.
work with them on their state assessments as well. So. And some other.
Thank you for putting it all in pretty charts.
Hopefully that makes sense. If you guys have questions, feel free to reach out.
Yeah, especially since we're not teachers per se, it's difficult to go through it unless somebody explains it here.
Or even trying to find the data on the internet is not easy.
So if you go to, I agree, it can be.
I did it. I went to Vistas and
Yes,
all that
this
jazz.
cumbersome.
Yeah, it is
And it
difficult.
doesn't have all of this information.
Right.
You know, so
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So I have some good news, report under report C. There was a solar deal that got finalized with
Right.
the county. And we will be receiving about $300,000 this first year in payment in lieu of taxes. It is we would like to target it towards the social, emotional learning of our kids. We've been working with Soul Counseling, and ARP has paid for that in the past. they have been fabulous. They do a lot of crisis intervention counseling for us and suicide, assessments and they're bilingual and they come to our schools. And so we are going to continue once ARC runs out. We want to be able to use those funds to continue that program and strengthen what we are able to do for the social emotional support of our kids.
So
And hopefully our staff. I would really like to see us expand some wellness programs for our staff.
Yeah.
That goes along with the whole new board goal of
I
implementing
100%
something.
Mhm.
In the back of my mind, I'm wondering what that's going to look like, because we don't really have anything that I'm aware of for staff.
So we do some wellness activities. I wouldn't say it's a holistic approach yet, but it's definitely been on our mind. I know Terry and I have talked a few times about some things like what would that look like? How do we help through the benefits kind of program? Like what are the things we could do? But we do offer, like we've offered cooking classes, some like yoga classes, some different like just wellness activities for staff, but they're not as structured and organized as I would like to see them. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think this might give us an opportunity. Now it will go down. So this is a big chunk this first year. I believe by 2056, it's down to around right under 100,000 that we would be getting. So it does gradually decrease, but it'll be around for a while.
More or less, what does the Soul company charge per year?
Oh,
Is it?
I want to say our contract is, because we don't just use it for special education. It's not just what, I'm looking at Mr. Sines, but it's not, it is for our regular ed students. And we're spending about 130,000. You guys approved that RFP, I believe, last year, sometime last year.
Yeah, I can't remember.
And I want to say it's running right around 130 to 140,000 a year.
And does Medicaid cover some of that or?
No, it's not, they're not
not
IEP
billable.
students, so it's not a billable service.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. But Medicaid does help us pay for a lot of services for, like it pays for all our nurses. It does pay for some other things as well as EAs, one-to-one EAs when we have a high need student or that sort of thing. So there's a lot of things that Medicaid pays for. Yeah. Comments, questions about that? Now for the best thing in the world, we'll give a quick update on the transportation metrics and the purpose of us. We know it's part of regulation, but we do want any feedback you guys have on it as we start to implement the discipline consequences, right? So Ms. Treviso and our new Assistant Director of Transportation, Anne Marie Moore, is back. Welcome back.
Thank you. Mr. President, members of the board, Superintendent Chavez, before you, we have the new behavior matrix for transportation. If you can recall, I think it was about January of last year where that bus referrals was a hot topic. And so since then, we've received a lot of feedback, concerns from the contractors, the bus drivers, regarding behaviors on the bus, that called for safety concerns that we wanted to address. And so since we received all that feedback, we have worked really hard to address these concerns and expedite the process. So not only have we met with our SIS or our system information, or yes, our student information systems manager to develop a new process for submitting referrals through Infinite Campus, but we've also brought together a small committee of administrators, counselors. We invited a few parents to participate to develop what you have before you, this new discipline matrix. And so most recently, we also had the opportunity to present this discipline matrix to a group of district administrators, and we did get a lot of feedback. And so we went back and forth with the feedback that we did receive. And I want to give Ms. Mora an opportunity to kind of highlight some of that feedback.
So some of the feedback that we received from the schools were considering a separation of the elementary with the secondary. Another suggestion was adding another level to our level ones. Another suggestion was combining all the level. So we really, and then we had those that were supportive of what we did. The feedback was, yes, this is good. We feel that this is streamlined. We now have something that we can use as we're meeting with the students and consulting with the parents. So based on all of that feedback, and like Member Kroll said, it is going to be a working document as well, especially once we look at the policies that were just approved, policy J for discipline. So we want to make sure we use that language, verbiage, whatever is in policy, and adapt it to what we have in the discipline matrix. Anything else?
Basically just highlighting, like Member Kroll mentioned, it's not perfect. We know that there may be changes that we have to come back and update, but we felt like it was important to address the driver's concerns and show that we are listening to them and that we are working with both parents and administrators to try to assist our students, because it is a safety concern. And we do have a mix of elementary level students combined with secondary students on our buses. We have had conversations. We are going through some brainstorming sessions, and now I'm very excited with Ms. Mora on board to be able to address that in the future, to separate the students on the buses. But that's going to require a much bigger conversation about routes and timings. From what I understand, in other districts that do kind of separate the elementary and secondary students, is they do staggered release times. And so we have to work with our administrators on that, but that is something that we have thought about. We have a lot of vaping concerns that we really want to crack down on. And I think that we have a great partnership with our administrators to try to address this. And so basically that's why we thought it was important to go to that 3 times you're off, the bus. Now, I also want to mention that we did meet with our contractors for the first time this school year last week, and we rolled this out to them. They were very pleased that we have taken their feedback into consideration, but we had to compromise. We had to sit down, and both Ms. Mora and I, having been coaches and working with teachers, we did express the fact that we really want that opportunity to be able to coach up our drivers as well. We see that that's an important piece that was missing in the past, and that they seem to be very interested in allowing us and giving us that opportunity to work with them. And so I think it's a win-win, which is why I think it's important that we roll this out effective this new school year. And so some of our plan moving forward is that we're going to take advantage of our open house, district open house tomorrow. Together, Ms. Mora and I have brainstormed, again, taking driver feedback into consideration. They want to be included in our open house events. And so we're going to be out there. You're going to see us out there tomorrow. Our administrators have responded with very positive remarks about us joining them. We're going to have buses at every school, including Columbus. We're taking our new activity bus down there. We're going to park it right in the drop-off lanes of the school outside, away from traffic. And we're going to have a table. We're basically the welcome committee for every school. Drivers have both volunteered to participate from M&T and Haynes busing. And we have a total of about 9 drivers. Now, that seems low, but I think this will be good when when they see that we're including them and we're listening to their voice. I think it'll be a positive turnaround in a lot of ways. They get to tour the bus. If we're going to we have different things out there. We're going to roll out this discipline matrix to parents. Then bus drivers are going to hand that out. We've emphasized just staying positive with parents, informing them of these changes. We also want to take an opportunity we've mentioned this before, it just didn't happen because I was one-man show, right? And so now with Ms. Mona on board, she can assist me with having those group meetings with students at the school levels. We're going to target secondary, Red Mountain being first, that had the highest referrals, DIS and then high school, and then kind of work our way through the elementary schools. We're gonna express to students how important it is for them to follow this plan. And we're gonna give them about 2-week grace period. It's like we tell our teachers in the classroom, take that first few days of school, the first 2 weeks to really build that rapport, trying to bring back the capturing kids' hearts and just really getting to know the students, that the way the drivers can have a positive impact on them, setting those clear expectations and telling them not only what you can't do, but what you should do, and trying to be consistent throughout. And then that way we give them a chance to learn the new referral process so that we can guide our contractors through that process. It'll cut down that wait time significantly. And so we're very excited that we're able to do that. I think, I don't feel 100% on this, but I think it's a good starting point. And so, do you have anything else to add?
So you guys are gonna go, when school starts on Monday, you're gonna start Monday at Red Mountain. That's to let them know what's happening.
So unfortunately, we can't start Monday. We kind of have tentatively scheduled Wednesday to meet with those, because we also have to do IEP reviews, a few other things that have to happen Monday and Tuesday. But by about Wednesday, we should be at both DIS, Red Mountain, and possibly high school. And then just work our way through.
If kids know, then they have no,
Right.
they let them know you're out. That's
Right.
it, because it's a privilege.
It is.
I have a couple of questions. As far as training for the bus drivers, at what, do they have an opportunity to take trainings like maybe like the ACEs training, adverse childhood experiences, that helps them to understand trauma and how kids react to trauma?
Is that something that?
So this is what I'm gonna say, they're contracted and we invite them to participate in anything we do. We do crisis prevention training, which is a de-escalation training, as well as other trainings, maybe not ACEs specifically, but really ways to build rapport. How do you think about the other person, but if the contractors don't participate, we're not allowed to require them to. But yes.
The invitation is open and
Always.
extended, and the opportunity.
And we connected the contractors at our meeting. I connected the contractors to the REC. They didn't realize they could reach out to the REC as well. And so hopefully they take advantage of that, because they've got some very good de-escalation training that would be incredibly helpful.
Because the more information they have.
Yes.
The easier,
Yes.
the more they understand, why behaviors happen. The other question I have too is, at what point is there a referral to, because you're seeing here that there's kids who have possession of drugs or alcohol, or kids that their behaviors are escalating. At what point is there a referral to like the counselor at the school or to an outside agency for these kids with
So I think
severe behaviors?
that's where we're working with the schools to try to map what they're doing at the school level as well. And
Right.
so I know that was one thing that was brought up as well. And so I
Yes.
think just identifying and acknowledging that when those kids, we start seeing that, making sure that we make that referral as well.
It would be good to have it like in the plan documented somewhere, so that, so that it is a step that's taken.
Maybe even just a footnote. I don't know that it has to fit within anything, because if it's a behavior happening on the bus, and let's say it's the first time, but it's also happens, things are happening at school, I think more of a footnote that says, if something about, a pattern of behaviors is
Yes.
identified between the school and the bus, because that external services, I mean, referrals to other agencies and
Yes.
made,
Yes, that's a good suggestion. We'll definitely
Something
add
like
that
that.
before we roll it
I
out
don't know.
tomorrow.
Okay,
And I'll check the regs. I haven't checked the regs specifically to see if maybe that's something you may suggest also.
right. But I, with you guys working so closely with the schools now, like if they're misbehaving here and it's consistent, there's probably something going on at school too. And there's probably some work we can do to holistically like figure out what they need.
That's what's gonna be nice
So-
about having all of these in Infinite Campus. is
Right.
Now you'll have a record of bus infraction as full infraction.
Yes.
It's definitely a step forward.
Yes.
Thank you.
So have you got, received your, license to drive the buses?
Not yet.
So two questions. One, thank you guys for the work, because I know a lot went into this
Yes.
and a lot of hours that it took. But like for drugs and alcohol on the bus, there's still steps within that, and the tampering with surveillance cameras. Those, I think that should be automatic, because I don't see a valid reason for drugs and alcohol, number one. But number two, I don't see a valid reason for the surveillance cameras, because that in the bigger picture, when you zoom out of the whole thing, the 40,000 foot view is that it's a liability for us, for the district. And that those cameras are to help document a situation in a neutral fashion to be able to capture that. And so if those things are being done, it's malicious, intentional. There's no accidental, I didn't mean to disconnect the camera kind of thing.
Thanks for that feedback. My thinking is trying to line up with what processes were in the building, because usually they, excuse me,
Steps.
I'm not here at cruises. I mean, I'm thinking cruises, but we had a sequence of before we ever
Yeah.
long-term suspended them, so
Here.
that was my thinking in offering. those.
But if you have drugs on you, you get
I
suspended
was
right
gonna
away.
say, there is a bypass if it's severe enough.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I agree with the drugs and alcohol. And I mean, I'm okay with the tampering of the surveillance cameras. I hadn't thought about it until you brought that up,
I
but definitely the drugs and alcohol, I think can be.
And I think that maybe a disclaimer too, that maybe with, because each individual incident is gonna be unique. If there's not, I mean, we try to capture all of it, but it's not gonna necessarily capture everything, but maybe have a disclaimer that, you know, based on the incidents in consultation with the superintendent's office, that, you know, we can go from
Zero to
zero,
60.
exactly. And be like, nope, you know, we had consultation and sorry, but you're gonna go to this and you're done with the bus.
I
Or
wonder if vaping and all of that is such a huge issue. Maybe there needs to be less verbal warnings for that sort of thing.
well, and I think what it does with it too, and that was my other piece, was that if you reduce those opportunities, then maybe they don't even bring them on the buses.
Right, exactly.
And so they're like, I'm not bringing that on the bus because this
I
is what
can't
I'm
ride the
facing, and
bus, yeah.
exactly. And so that was my other piece, was, yeah, trying to reduce some of those opportunities, so they're like, oh, I get 2 more chances or 3 more chances or whatever. I think that if we move towards almost a zero tolerance.
So maybe move, what I'm thinking as, because I think it would be a pretty simple shift, is move the drugs and alcohol to, like a bottom thing that says may result in immediate.
Like possession of weapons.
Yeah, well, the drug,
Yeah,
so,
that's
yeah, like
Move it
possession,
down there.
yes.
Mhm.
Yes, like move it to that, move drugs and alcohol and tampering with surveillance camera.
I think physical harm too. I don't.
Well, it is there, school safety varies based on behavior.
And have a discretion, like there has to be something in it.
Well, physical harm, it looks like you can commit 3 offenses before
Yeah.
you're.
Where's physical harm?
Can't get
Right
them
above
out. Hey,
this.
you know,
5
this is
now.
a,
Yeah.
Okay,
don't bring 10 pounds of marijuana.
Yeah, exactly.
It looks like you could
yeah, I
basically-
think that one needs to be at move too. I'm sorry, I missed that one.
And then that means you can physically harm someone 3 times.
And it's not okay.
Off the bus.
And if you
Yeah.
haven't learned then.
So I'm only.
And that's why I was wanted to bring that.
Guys.
There's a lot that, you know, did get feedback, this is really short, we're gonna have kids that aren't gonna be able to come anymore, and if they can't come to school, so we wanted to find like a middle ground to begin with. And then we move forward, but if the feedback from you all is to just.
And
I just think there's a few things that we probably should say, we're not gonna, there's not a lot of chances that are gonna happen here. Now, that doesn't mean we couldn't figure out a way to maybe they earn privileges back. You know, that there's a plan put in place to earn privileges back if they commit something like that. We do that with kids that get long-term suspended,
I like that.
we give them the
Well, but-
opportunity to earn, and they have to prove it through grades, through completing, through
Yeah.
signing
I
on.
like that.
But here's the other side of that coin too, is that, oh, I can mess up and I get back on the bus if
So
I'm good. So
We're-
maybe.
We're
so-
also teachers.
Yeah.
So, and they're also
Yeah.
kids, so I do think we have to have a balance.
Yeah.
Now, we wouldn't do it every single
Yeah.
time, you know, but I think there is an
Or
opportunity.
maybe let
to
it
be
ride for a
restored.
year or two to try to restore that.
I
and then
think
be
there
able
needs to
kind
be
of-
some restore,
Yes,
potentially some
restorative.
restorative
Yeah.
practice.
Especially if you're talking about a kindergartner getting in a physical fight
Yeah.
versus a senior in high school.
Yeah.
That's very different.
Very
And if they're connected, if they get connected to supportive services,
Right.
to some mental health or whatever, then they're making steps. And we're- So there should be some restorative practices when it comes to.
It wouldn't be immediate, though.
Yeah.
I mean, it
Yeah.
would
No.
definitely be a consequence.
Yes.
Yes.
So,
And I know it would take a
I'm just
lot.
happy you guys are gonna tell them all so that nobody has nothing to say. They know what is happening. There's no, well, I didn't know.
Well, they'll still say that I didn't.
No, I know that, but you know what I'm saying? I mean.
I missed that day area.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I was at a doctor's appointment.
Well, I know that, but you know what I'm saying, in general.
Yeah, exactly. No, yeah, I get you.
Cause I think it hasn't been done in a long
And this
time.
is gonna be in Espanol also, Spanish?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
And Japanese and Russian.
And whatever you put it.
whatever language is needed.
And more plans to, of course, put it in our handbook, do maybe on our website, attach it to, there's already parent responsibilities and student responsibilities that once they register, parents have to click on that they agree. We could kind of link it in there. There's a lot of different possibilities for getting that out. But I think the first and foremost is addressing the kids directly and then handing this out at tomorrow's open house and moving forward from there.
And maybe a PSA, once you guys, address the kids
Oh,
directly
yes.
on our websites, hey, we notified kids, this is the policy, so parents can say, I didn't know anything about it.
We're not
On our
putting up
website.
with it.
And our student information system is amazing with the ability to text things out. And, I mean,
Or maybe even
you're a
text.
parent.
Million bazillion for each child
Good.
in every way, shape or form.
Good.
Or maybe even text it out, hey, have a conversation with your kids tonight because we just went over bus policies.
Yes, I think that's a great idea. I have already.
I really like
They-
your idea about separating secondary kids from,
I do too.
I really like it.
It just, it's gonna
I
take a
know it takes a
lot.
lot of work.
Oh,
It
riding
does.
on the
I
bus
just-
together?
yes.
Yes, that's gonna
I-
take me a little while but we are in the.
Yeah, I
lines
think
that
so
I
too.
answered.
We're separating and meaning the kids sit in the front and then.
No,
No,
No.
separate routes.
Oh, different routes.
buses.
Oh.
I think that would,
But how about sibling sets?
See,
Well, those are
that's-
things that, that's why it can't be done quickly, but it's something we've been talking about in terms of the direction we would go.
Yeah.
So it just, we'd have to figure that out.
Yeah.
But again, because
It's always
of how rural we are, there
Yes,
may
to
be
be
some.
some.
yeah, there
Have
could
to be together.
They have to,
Yeah.
and then working with building administrators for end times, start times, staggering some of that. But it can be done, it's just gonna take a little bit of time.
So we'll see you next month.
No, it's not happening next month. I just want to put that out there.
Well, we do want to thank you for your
Yes.
feedback
Thank
and
you.
for your
Thank
support.
you.
We have really-
Thank you for keep working on
Appreciate you
this.
guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And with that, we have 2 announcements. Do you have anything else?
I have nothing.
Nothing else?
Oh, Mr. Turner does.
Oh,
Mr.
sorry.
President, members of the board, Superintendent Chavez, I did get notified before I announced this award that every board member met the minimum requirements. Training hours this year. And then at the law conference, Mrs. Crumley, Mr. Kroll, Mrs. Cameron received the board attendance award for Region 8.
All
Wow.
right.
So congratulations.
So we're number one, just for a little longer.
All right. So with that, we're on to announcements. Any board member requests for agenda items?
I just have one more question, I'm sorry. When it comes to teacher recruitment, how are we doing? Are we doing well?
That would be a really great question for Ms. Trejo. Let's put you on the spot.
25 openings still
Wow.
between teachers and EAs. We're working our hardest.
That's actually not-
It's not that bad,
Mm-mm.
honestly. Yes, and our
Better than-
bill is special ed still, but,
But it's better than last year?
yeah, it is.
Yeah.
It is.
And we did have, I think, a few resignings just in the last like 10 that were last minute unexpected. So, that kind of, yeah, I think I want to say 3, 4 maybe.
Do you have to go
So,
back and teach first grade yet?
I don't know that we have a first grade position open, but kinder is open.
I did sixth grade for 3 years in Texas.
All right. So,
I would like to have some information on how we're doing with the air conditioner systems,
Okay, sure. We can give an update
because we
next
are
month.
gonna.
It's gonna be hot.
It's gonna be hot, so just wanna know where we're at. Columbus Memorial, and I guess, what else are we doing?
Red Mountain.
Red
and
Mountain.
And actually, I mean, we can do a formal, I can have them come do a formal report, but because it's happening right now, I'll get them to do something in writing, like where we're at. I know they've all started and I know they've been working on it. This building just got the wires run for it, this week. I don't know if they're finished, but they were running wires here. So, I know they're in the middle of it. I just don't know exactly, but we'll get an email out to you guys.
Shade structures, didn't we talk about shade structure the only time for bus loading zones?
We talked about solar
Yeah.
shade structures, so we need an update on that.
Yeah, because that's gonna be in the next 3 weeks, 4 weeks is gonna be only warmer. Any other requests? Okay. Next regular meeting will be held August 15th, 2024 at 5:30 PM. The meeting will be held at the Emmett Shockley Administration Building here in Deming. And with that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Also move.
Second,
I'll second.
Mr. Kroll.
Yes, sir. Mrs. Crumley,
Yes.
Mrs. Paez.
Yes.
Mrs. Cameron.